who is in remote attendance that this meeting will be broadcast live via the Council's YouTube channel and will be available for viewing by the public and media. The broadcast will also be available for repeated viewing at a later date. This broadcast may be terminated or suspended in accordance with Council protocol. By participating in this meeting, you are consenting to be filmed and to the use and storage of those images for broadcasting or training purposes and for the purpose of keeping historical records and making those records available to the public. A copy of the privacy notice may be found on the Council website. Thank you. So first thing, Denise, summons of meeting.
Thanks, Chair. Good afternoon, members. You're hereby summoned to attend the bi-monthly meeting of the Assurance, Audit and Risk Committee held today, 15th of July at 4 p.m. here in the Guildhall. And I'll proceed to take the roll. Councillor Sean Carr. Councillor Gary Donnelly. Councillor Mary Durkin. Alderman Darren Guy. Councillor Dan Kelly. Alderman Keith Kerrigan. Councillor Patricia Logue. Councillor Eamon McCann. Councillor Anne McCluskey. Councillor Keir Maguire. Councillor Jim McKeever. Councillor Philip McKinney. Alderman David Ramsey. Councillor Martin Riley. Thanks, members.
Thank you, Denise, and welcome everyone to the meeting here today, and especially our new members, first time at Audit Committee. We do have an issue with training because of COVID. We weren't able to fit in any training before this meeting. So September is the month that we're hoping to get some training done for all our members. And just when I'm at it, and I'll just thank the outgoing chair as well for his work last year, and the vice chair as well. And the next thing I have on here is declaration of members' interest, and I think everybody has received to fill in. Okay, thank you. Chairperson's business. The first thing I have is welcoming, obviously, Brona from our independent advisor and Colette from the audit office. These are very welcome to the meeting today. And the only other thing I have here is that Councillor McKinney would like to speak in Chairperson's business. Go ahead there, Councillor McKinney.
Thank you, Chair, and congratulations on your appointment, and thank you to Councillor Donnelly for last year as well. I'd just like to bring a point up about, really, it's a point of accuracy. The Council website obviously records all attendances, and I was going through the attendances and I noticed that it's recorded that every one of us was absent in March. There was a meeting in March which didn't take place, but it's actually recorded as being a meeting and we're all absent from it. And I wonder, could we possibly have that readdressed and the accuracy sorted out, please? Thank you.
Yeah, okay, Denise. Okay, next item of business is the minutes of the last meeting way back in January 23rd. First of all, accuracy, pages 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and 8. Proposer and seconder for accuracy. Proposed, Councillor McKinney. Seconded, Alderman Guy. And now move on to matters arising. We have proposer and seconder, matters arising. Any matters arising? No. So can we have proposer and seconder, the minutes be passed? Proposed, Councillor McKinney, and seconded by Alderman Guy. Thank you. Next item of business we have here is item number 6, internal audit reports, and James is going to cover that one for us. Thank you, James.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to update members on the internal audit work carried out in the Council in the period November 19 to July 2020. The audit work finalised recently was the follow-up audit of licensing, the North West Region Waste Management Group, and two audits in police and community safety partnership 17-18 and 18-19. In terms of the follow-up audit and licensing, the initial audit report was carried out in January 2018, and there was 23 recommendations made in that report, and that had the assurance rating of improvement needed. We carried out a follow-up audit recently, and from the 23 agreed recommendations made in the original report, 19 are now fully implemented, 3 partially implemented, and 1 has not yet been implemented. So as a result of the significant progress that has been made, the assurance level is now satisfactory. In terms of the audit of the North West Region Waste Management Group, audit is satisfied again that the internal systems and controls are adequate and were operating effectively at the time of the review. We made 1 recommendation in that report, but that has also received a satisfactory assurance rating. There was 2 audits of the audit of police and community safety partnership. This was the first time that internal audit has reviewed this area. The report 3.3.1 and 3.3.2 details why the audit work was carried out, and the objectives of the audit are there on 3.3.3. Overall, internal audit are satisfied with the governance, risk management, purchasing, meeting attendance, payments, reporting and monitoring arrangements in place. We're also satisfied that there was a control framework established in relation to the administration of the small project support grant. So as a result of these audits, a number of recommendations have been made to improve the control environment, particularly in regard to grant administration. However, the audits still have been given the audit opinion of satisfactory, as internal audit were satisfied that the frameworks had been established and the areas identified were to improve compliance with those frameworks. The final audit reports were there attached to Appendix C and Appendix D. There was other internal audit work there detailed at item 3.4. There's no budget implications arising as a result of this business, and that's to seek the recommendation to seek members' comments on the internal audit reports.
Thank you, James. There's no indicated. Sorry, go ahead there.
Thank you, Chair. I have 2 questions, if I may. The first question is in relation to the PCSP report. Obviously, there was a lot of really good work done, significant piece of work for covering the 2 years. However, I just wanted to tease out a little bit more, if I may, in relation to the satisfactory assurance that was given in relation to this report, given that there were 13 B1 recommendations and 44, 45 recommendations in total. If I could just have a little bit more information, that would be great. And shall I wait for the second question? Or?
Yes, please. Yeah. Okay. Go ahead there. Do you want to answer that now?
Yes, I'll answer that. There was obviously, yes, there was a number of, I think it was 40 something recommendations made. However, we were satisfied that the frameworks and the frameworks were in place, the key controls were in place, and the recommendations were more around improving the audit trail. And again, this was the first review that the internal audit carried out of PCSP, so it was a hefty piece of work in terms of the review itself. So that maybe it was the reason why there were so many recommendations. But overall we were satisfied that it was a satisfactory.
You coming in again, Bruna?
Yes, Chair. Thank you. Thank you for that, James. Second question is in relation to the reference made to some of the internal audit staff carrying out work in other areas of the Council. As we're all aware, key to internal audit is that of independence and making sure that's upheld at all times. And I'm just seeking some assurance about what controls be put in place, that there'll be no impact on any audits that will be carried out by internal audit going forward. I appreciate in these critical times of COVID-19 that was necessary, and just looking for some more information on that. Thank you.
As it turned out, it wasn't as if the audit section moved for a significant period of time into, say, accounts payable, payroll, emergency planning, and also in each of our terms of reference for audit work, we now have built in a declaration for any conflicts of interest of that nature. So we'll be satisfied that there wouldn't be any issues.
You happy enough with them answers, Bruna?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Donnelly.
Thanks, Chair, and congratulations on your position. Chair, my concerns are regarding the audit of the PCSP, and I am miffed and surprised that given that there's 44 recommendations, that this has been given a tag of satisfactory. A cursory glance at this will tell you that there's very, very serious issues. And it's my intention here today is to propose that we do not accept this recommendation and that we put this back until full council, because there's a lot of stuff in it that needs to be the volume of material here, and the enormous amount of what appears to be irregularities is very, very worrying, and I wouldn't be surprised if this could lead down the line to a forensic audit of this taking place. And I'm not going to go through them all, but in some cases here, ratepayers' money was used to buy cigarettes as prizes, bingo prizes. Invoices weren't included, invoices in different surnames. The system seems to be chaotic, and I have it all highlighted. A cursory glance at this will set off alarm bells. For anybody who has read it, can't help but see that there's something very fundamentally wrong. So I'm going to propose that we don't accept this report and that we put it back to full council so we have time to digest, basically, because I was actually surprised at what I had read in this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Donnelly. You've heard the proposal that's on the floor. Is there a seconder for that proposal? Councillor McCluskey is seconding the proposal.
Can I ask for the auditor's response to some of that, please?
The assurance ratings are not unscientific. It's just to give you an indication of what, in terms of our profession, what we think in terms of the control environment. We were satisfied generally that the frameworks were in place, that the key controls were in place in PCSP. There was a large number of recommendations made, but we were satisfied with what we've seen in terms of the control environment. I don't know, Dermot Harrigan is here, the PCSP manager, and as he wants to say a few words in terms of the audit process, because all the recommendations we went through with manager and they're all agreed.
Thank you for that. But see, just before Dermot comes on, before we could go on, could I just ask a follow-up question, please? Sorry, Chair. Thank you. I'm just new to audit. I haven't been here in years, but anyhow, 44 recommendations. I've seen the other reports, and there has been recommendations there too. Granted, maybe not as many, but previous reports coming on, what is the average? You know, is 44 outstandingly amount, or can you give me a wee just?
It depends on the nature of the audit. Obviously, for example, the audit of licensing, there was 23 recommendations in that, but that attracted the initial improvement needed. Mm-hmm. Whereas in this one there was 40, but there were lower level recommendations. And in terms of the review of the internal control system as we saw it,
there's B1,
there
B2,
wasn't.
B3,
there wasn't. Some of the issues weren't we felt as significant, but we would always maintain that the important thing is for members to read the reports, not to concentrate maybe so much on the assurance rate. The assurance rating is just to give you an indication of what we think.
Yeah.
But it's obviously up to members to read the action plan in terms of the recommendations that have been made and the management responses that have been and the implementation dates that have been included in the reports. That's the sort of the key piece of the report is will be the action plan.
Okay, thank you.
Just if I could come on that there, this is the first audit of the PCSP, so we need to keep that in mind. So it is the first audit, and we always speak about dealing with things at committee level instead of taking everything to council. We try and deal with it here, and I think that's where we should be dealing with it. So, you know, a recommendation that I have is that a report be brought back to our April meeting, because taking this to council now will not be helpful at all. It's the proposals on the floor, but I want you to consider, you know, this is the first. You know, should we not be seeing this out as
Chair, with all due respect, there's a proposal on the floor.
and I think it needs to be dealt with. You know, one of the reasons there was 5 samples picked out here, right? And it's my understanding, it doesn't name, but it say one of them had this, 2 of them had that, 3 of them lacked this. You know, it's my understanding that without doubt the whole 5 of them are there's issues with them. That's not a case of putting your hand into a barrel of apples and picking out 5 and 1 of them's rotten. This is put your hand into a barrel and picking out 5, and there's issues with the 5 of them. The proposal, I made a proposal, and I think it should be dealt with. Thank you.
Okay, there is a proposal on the floor. The problem we have here is the 45 recommendations that have to be dealt with. We're going to go to full council with probably the same situation. But the proposal is on the floor as been indicated, so it's going to have to be taken to vote. Unless there's another proposal. Sorry, Denise wants to come on there.
Sorry, Chair, if I can just come in there. Members, as the Chair has said, obviously this is the first time that the PCSP has been looked at, so there's a number of recommendations, a huge amount of recommendations, but from a glance and from what the internal audit manager has said, there's no notion of any fraud or irregularity, and I appreciate Councillor Donnelly, the proposals on the floor, but if I can just maybe bring members' attention to the table of recommendations in both reports. A number of the recommendations are to be implemented March, April, May, June time. My recommendation from my role would be that we go back and we look to make sure that these recommendations have been implemented within the time period, and we bring it back to members and provide a report in relation to the implementation of the recommendations within the time frame. And if there's further issues at that stage, we can obviously consider it then at that point.
Thank you, Jenny. Can I come in? Thank you, Chair. I think it might help making a decision if Dermot could maybe give us a wee outline of where the recommendations are, if that might help with the decision making, Dermot.
Members should keep in mind as well, PCSP is set up as a different statutory organisation from council, so we're dealing not only with councillors but with independent members and statutory partners, and some of the recommendations are that some of the independent members hadn't signed a conflict of interest or had registered conflict of interest but hadn't signed the documentation of it. So we're dealing with elected members, we're dealing with independent members who are appointed by the policing board, and we're dealing with statutory partners. And also it's worth noting that as well as being accountable to council, the PCSP is also accountable to the Joint Committee, which is the Policing Board and Department of Justice. So there's a raft of requirements from the Joint Committee as well as the requirements from the council. So the audit was looking at all the requirements from the Joint Committee and from council, and looking at where there were recommendations for improvement on that. And just the work that the PCSP does, I mean, we have 16 employees all employed by council, which is the admin staff, the management staff, and also the community safety wardens. But we also give out about £250,000 worth of grant aid each year. And a lot of recommendations is looking at our grant aid files and seeing where there could be improvements made on those, both in respect of council procedures, but also in respect of the recommendations from the financial guidelines from the Joint Committee. And the likes of outcome-based accountability, I mean, PCSP is probably the first section within council. They pilot the outcome-based accountability on grant aid. And again, it's a learning process for us, so there's recommendations in that as well. And all those recommendations are now being taken forward by officers, because we're in the process again of allocating grant assistance to community groups, issuing letters of offer, and any of the recommendations that's in relation to those are being implemented with immediate effect.
Thank you, Dermot. Councillor Donnelly looking to come in again there.
Thanks, Chair. Chair, see this money that people talk about handing out, it's public money, and us as elected members are accountable to the people who put us in here, i.e. the ratepayers. And if you just take a look, in one instance the last page of a constitution was signed by the chair and vice chair. However, this was a different typescript from the remainder of the document. This is therefore a lack of legitimacy of this page. In one instance, the signature stated that the application form were not matched to a listing of trustees signed by the group. Internal Audit performed a check to the Charity Commission website but could not confirm the name stated. There is therefore a lack of assurance around the legitimacy of the applicants. There is another at least 24 statements similar to the two that I read out, and if this doesn't cause alarm bells, then there's something seriously wrong. So I would propose we put this back to full council so that members can get a proper read at this, digest it, and have a proper informed conversation at full council. That's all.
So Councillor Donnelly, what you're asking is, instead of discussing it at the next meeting of this committee, you want it to go to full council? Okay, we'll just do a recorded vote here on the proposal, if it goes forward or not. Thank you.
Okay, members. Councillor Gary Donnelly. Councillor Mary Durkin. Alderman Darren Guy. Dan Kelly's not here. Alderman Keith Kerrigan.
Against.
Councillor Patricia Logue. Councillor Kieran Maguire. Councillor Philip McKinney. Alderman David Ramsey.
Against.
Thanks, members.
Okay, so that is carried, so this will be brought to the full council. Thank you.
Chair, can I just come in again? Is there any, given full council as what it is, and we are going to be discussing this now at full council, is there any more information that can be recommended from the auditors that we should see? Is there anything else that we would need to have in order to base those discussions, other than the reports themselves?
Well, Denise did say that, for the April meeting we would know better where we're at with all the recommendations. There's a possibility that most recommendations will probably be in place because there was timelines, but obviously with the situation we're in. So I would assume that that's what's going to happen now at the next meeting, only it'll be council, which, wider.
That would be very helpful to shape the discussion then.
The only thing is, Patricia, obviously full council meeting, I think, is it next Thursday? Next Thursday, so it's the timing of that, with the papers being out and everything. So there probably wouldn't be an update provided for that council meeting, but certainly for the next one we can provide an update. That's the only thing because of the timing of it. But you're right, we would need an update in terms of if the recommendations have been implemented. Yeah.
All right, forgive my ignorance, but that comes to we get updates, don't we, on all the recommendation of all the audits? Thank you. It's just a thought, there might have been something else that. Okay.
Okay, folks, everybody happy enough now? Move on now to number 7, and Denise is going to take the counter fraud, whistleblowing and anti-bribery policy.
Thanks, Chair. So members, the purpose of this report is to seek your comments on approval on the Council's counter fraud, whistleblowing and anti-bribery policy, which is attached there at the appendix. So members will be aware that traditionally the Council has always held separate individual policies for counter fraud, whistleblowing and anti-bribery. However, there have always been clear links between the three policies. So we've created a new combined document so that the three policies are available as one unified document, taking into account all relevant guidance and best practice. Members will also be aware that the Audit Office has recently issued new guidance as well in relation to raising concerns, and the policy will obviously be reviewed to take into account that. So it's really to seek members' comments and approval on the revised policy. Thank you.
No indicated speakers. Everyone happy enough? Okay, thank you. Move on to the next one. Internal audit strategy, and James is going to take that one. The plan as well, yeah.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to seek members' comments and approval for the internal audit strategy and plan for 2021. The public sector internal audit standards requires internal audit sections to have an internal audit strategy and plan approved for the organisation's audit committee. The internal audit strategy details the focus and priorities of the internal audit section for the year ahead. The documents are attached to Appendix F and G, and there's no financial implications arising from this report, and the recommendation is that members approve the draft internal audit strategy and plan for 2021.
Again, we have no indicated speakers. Oh, sorry, go ahead there, Councillor McGuire.
As well, yeah. Yeah, on page 276 of planning, and the planning proposes to complete audits, that were not completed from 1920. Planning protocol states that a weekly list of all new the protocol states that all new applications should be circulated to councillors. Now, in the first 6 months of this year already, there has been 40 validated applications that haven't been circulated to councillors. So that's about 10%. So really and truly, we would kind of need to know what purpose is it that it's serving for not sending these to councillors. What's the risk to council from fraud for not sending these to councillors as well? And just one more thing, who decides, who's filtered these and decided to send 90% to councillors and keep the other 10% back?
Sorry, could you?
I've missed that completely. Kieran, sorry about that. At what page are we on here? Sorry, I beg your pardon.
It's in planning. 276. Planning's referenced.
Yes, we're currently carrying out an audit of planning. Yes,
yeah,
we're just commenced it.
I want this monitored.
Yeah,
that protocols for planning states that all new validated applications are to be sent to councillors of the planning committee. The first 6 months of this year, there have been 40 that were validated but not sent to councillors. That's about roughly 10%. So could we find out who decides this? Who decided that this 10% would not be sent to councillors? And what would be the purpose for holding them back? And also, what position does that leave council in, for allegations of fraud or whatever?
Thank you, Councillor McGuire.
I would not have that information. I will pass that on to the planning department. Thank you.
Chair, can I have a response back to this committee?
Everyone happy with that? Okay, so the next one is being taken by Colette. You're very welcome again, Colette.
Thank you, Chair. Members, I'm here to present the audit strategy for 1920. We issued this in February, so I will actually be updating it as I go through it, because things have obviously moved substantially on since we issued this in February. So the audit strategy, what it attempts to do is actually to indicate to members how we will undertake the audit of the 1920 accounts. So the financial statements ended with the year end 31 March 2020. We also it outlines how we plan to audit the proper arrangements in place, and also then how the local government auditor plans to conduct an improvement audit and assessment. So just to say to you members that we have identified a significant risk, and our audit is based on risk assessment. And when we drafted this, we had identified a significant risk around the uncertainty of the going concern status
of the airport. And this is not new. We have identified this in a number of years, and indeed in previous years the local government auditor has included a paragraph within her opinion around the uncertainty. So that will continue for the 1920 year as well. But also members should note that the other additional significant risk that we will be looking at as part of this other audit is the financial viability of the council. Not surprisingly, these are two critical risks that council has identified themselves, and we look at financial viability of all councils we audit, not just this council, because of the uncertainty around your funding streams, which you're all very well aware of. So when we come to do this audit, we'll be looking at recovery plans that council will have, and any income that they have been guaranteed from whatever source. So that will be looked at in some detail as part of this audit. Just to say to you then, as part of, I also mentioned then we also do a piece of work around performance improvement and assessment, and members who have been on the committee before will remember those pieces of work. Well, unfortunately, that may change this year because of the difficulties with the COVID pandemic. So what we do know at this stage, and it is all work in progress, let me say, that council have been advised that they are not required to produce their improvement plan, performance improvement plan at 30th of June, which is required under statute. But the Department for Communities has advised them that they're not required to produce that for 2021 at this stage. But I will say that there's been no other clarification received from the Department for Communities at this stage as to what the performance improvement and assessment audits will look like. We are working very closely with the department to try and get some clarification, and of course we will want that information passed to councils as soon as it's available. So again, a little bit of uncertainty around all of that. But just to go back to our actual audit of the financial statements, so you'll see here on page 285 of your document, we outline materiality. And we calculate a level of materiality as part of our audit, and it's usually based on prior year expenditure. And you'll see on that page that we show you in those boxes how we've done that. So it's based on 2% of prior year expenditure, both for council and for group. Just to inform members who maybe have not been on this committee before, what we mean by that is that council's own accounts has a certain level of materiality, and then group. And when we say group, it means that it includes CODA within that, because the accounts of CODA are incorporated within council's accounts, and those are the accounts that we audit. Materiality is based on, as I said, 2% of prior year expenditure, and you'll see the figures, 1.7 million and 1.83 million. But materiality is not just about figures as well. We look at other things, and they're outlined at the bottom of that page. We look at disclosures within the remuneration report, movements on reserves, the legality of expenditure on audit fee, just as an example. So sometimes we look at very low levels of expenditure where we're concerned about those as well. On page 286 of the document, you'll see we are also just notifying you of certain things that are very important to our audit. We're independent from council, and we carry out our audit in accordance with certain auditing standards which we're required to do. It tells you about how we manage personal data. We have access to quite a range of personal data as part of the audit, so obviously we need to have controls in place to ensure that that's secure. And then we work with James and his team on the internal audit opinions. So I mentioned to you, it's on page 289, the significant risk around the City of Derry Airport, and there's a bit of more detail in that. And then, of course, as I said to you before, we'll also be looking around financial resilience of council, and we'll look at recovery plans and steps to ensure resilience going forward. So the other piece of the I wanted to draw your attention to is the timetable, which is outlined on 294, page 294, page 14 of our document. Because of the pandemic, the statutory timetables have been moved for the production of accounts and also the audit of accounts. Members will know that we normally work to the 30th of September, so I'd have been coming back here in September with the results of our audit. But this year, those dates have been changed. So instead of Council having to prepare draft accounts by the end of June, they now have to the 31st of August to prepare accounts, and we have to the 31st of December to audit those accounts. Now, we're very hopeful that we'll be able to get those audited in a much earlier timetable, and at the minute we're working towards the end of November, but it really will depend upon our access to information, our ability to be able to actually come out and audit. At the minute we're auditing virtually, which is much slower, we're finding as well. So we do hope that we're able to get access to staff in the offices, which will make things much quicker. So I'll just bring to your attention just finally on page 297 or page 17 of our document, the audit fees. So for the audit of the accounts, it's £61,000, and for the audit of the performance improvement and assessment is £22,000. It is likely that £22,000 will be substantially reduced because we'll have less audit work to do, but at this stage I can't actually tell you what that is because, as I said before, we're waiting on clarification from the departments and communities at this time. And then finally on the last page of the document, just to outline our teams, and I'm happy to say that the teams remained static from previous years as well, which always helps. I'm happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thank you very much, Colette. Does anyone wish to speak? Questions? Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Just one question for Colette in relation to the fees for the financial part. I appreciate that the performance fee may go down given what you've just said, but just in the increase in that generally across the board, for any background to that, just thank you.
Thank you, Brona. Yes, very good question. So the fees have increased from previous years, and that is a direct result of us actually benchmarking against private sector. And we realised that actually we had been undercharging for quite a number of years, and indeed we actually hadn't been fully recovering our fees as well. So we have looked at the fees across the board for all of our clients, and that has led to the increase at this point.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, so we're looking for a recommendation to endorse the audit strategy. Everyone happy enough? Yeah. Thank you very much. Okay, so Denise, number 11. Annual governance statement.
Thanks, Chair. The purpose of this report, member, is to seek your comments and approval on the Council's annual governance statement for the financial year 1920. Members will be aware that this statement is completed on an annual basis and attached to the back of the financial statements. As part of the process of preparing the annual governance statement, the Chief Executive, Directors, Heads of Service, Lead Officers are asked to consider significant governance issues that require action and disclosure. In 2020, members are aware, obviously, that the Council has faced previously unseen and unprecedented challenges to its finances and operations. Therefore, the significant governance issues identified this year as a result of the COVID-19 crisis. The most significant issues for the Council are detailed in the table below, which highlights the governance issue, the controls in place, and the proposed action being taken to deal with the issue. So members will see there in the table below and also in the governance statement that the significant governance issues for this year which have been identified are the inability to ensure the future financial stability of Council in relation to the implications arising from COVID-19. And the second one is the inability to secure the future viability of City of Derry Airport. Members will see there the action that's being taken to mitigate both of those risks, but happy to take any questions on that. Thank you.
Okay, anybody looking to come on? Brona?
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for the report, Denise. It's been very informative. I wanted to ask in relation to the finances. Obviously, the Council, as you've said, has faced huge challenges during this COVID-19 time. And my question would be based around two parts in respect of the going concern viability for the Council moving forward given these financial challenges. And also on page 322, there's a reference made to the EPP, the estimated penny product, and I'm familiar with the background of that in respect of hoping that the department would pay on the EPP when normally they pay out in advance in the EPP, and then when the actual penny product information comes through, they may look for a clawback from the council, which is a further financial challenge. And I was just wondering, could we get more information perhaps around that? Thank you.
Okay, Alfie.
Thank you, Bruna. Firstly, it's my understanding that from detailed discussions we've been in with the department is that councils ultimately can't be in a position of remaining to be a going concern. Whilst obviously councils can face insolvency and cash flow challenges, there's a range of steps that will be implemented by the Department for Communities in a position where a council was in significant financial difficulty. The ultimate step in that process would be where the department would come in and strike a balanced budget for the council. That would obviously involve very significant decisions, and it certainly would be a position we wouldn't want to be in, and one which we don't intend to be in. But that ultimate control would mitigate against any issues with the council being a going concern. As I've said, we wouldn't plan to be in that position. We're working very hard this year in terms of detailed financial reports into council, and most recently on the governance committee in relation to Colette touched on the recovery plan. So we're aiming to produce a balanced budget for this financial year and to governance committee in September. So that will require more difficult decisions, but we hope that all the mitigations and funding that we've secured will I suppose, minimise those. In relation to the rate base risk, I suppose just wider for members' information, we estimate what rates level of income we're going to receive well in advance of the financial year, and we're paid 1/12 of that amount of money at the start of each month. Obviously, as the year progresses, Land and Property Services provide us with an update in terms of where we're going to finish against that. And generally here, that has been a positive figure at the end of the year because we're very prudent in forecasting that. And in this year's accounts, you will have seen a significant positive finalisation. Unfortunately, that's unlikely to be the position this year. Obviously, the rate base has been significantly impacted. So I suppose there's two controls we have in that regard. Firstly, anybody that's seen the year-end outturn report will have seen we've transferred a significant amount of money to reserves to mitigate against any negative rates finalisation. And secondly, we're also engaged with government to underwrite any shortfall in this financial year and also to provide support for the next two financial years. I think no matter how good we are at forecasting, it's going to be impossible to predict for a long number of months what the impact on the rate base is going to be like. So that obviously poses very serious challenges for our upcoming rates process. And so those are our two controls at present, but it's something that we continue to work on a weekly basis. And ultimately, government support will be the one thing that will help us not have to make very significant decisions as part of our rates. And that's our primary focus because we want to continue to be able to deliver all our services at the current levels for the year ahead. And hopefully we can minimise any impact on that through government support. Thank you.
Okay, Bruno, happy enough. Thank you. Our next item is item 12, and again, Denise is looking after that one.
Thanks, Chair. Members, the purpose of this report is to seek your comments and approval on the Council's Code of Governance for the financial year 1920. The SIPFA Solus Delivering Good Governance Framework was published in 2016 and represents best practice for developing and maintaining a local code of governance, which we have done, and it's attached there at Appendix K. So members are just asked for your consideration of our local code of governance and your approval. Thank you.
Okay, everybody happy enough? Thank you again, Denise. Our next one now is 13, which is the annual audit report, and that's James, and you're taking number 14 as well, the public sector one as well, isn't that right? Okay.
The purpose of this report is to seek members' comments and approval on the Council's annual audit opinion for 1920. On the basis of the work carried out, internal audit can provide a satisfactory level of assurance that the Council's control environment is adequate and effective, i.e. that satisfactory assurance can be obtained from the governance systems and procedures in place. This is a positive assessment of the Council's control environment and reflects favourably on the organisation's governance arrangements. This opinion is based upon the work of the internal audit section over 1920 financial year. The report is attached at Appendix L. There are no financial or other implications arising from this report. It is recommended that members approve the annual audit report for Derry City and Strabane District Council 1920.
One speaker, Councillor Logue.
Hi, thank you. Thank you, Chair, and thank you for that report. Just a question, I suppose. Given our previous proposal to bring the PCSP report onto Council, can we ratify this, or would that have implications for this? It wouldn't. Right, okay, thank you.
Okay, everyone happy to approve then? Yep. Sorry, Councillor McGuire.
Yeah, thanks, James. As all council policies rural proofed? Aren't they required to be rural proofed, but are they rural proofed?
Chair, if I can just come in there, in terms of the committee reports where there's the section on the implications, there's a rural needs section in there, so any new policies that's coming to council, there should be any rural implications should be identified in that section 4.1 in relation to the rural needs implications.
Look, are all sections compliant with the rural needs?
That's a good question. I don't know, but I can bring that back, Chair or Kieran, and see if I can find out more information about you.
The annual monitoring that came before the governance meeting on the 30th of June, it was very, very light on detail, very, very scant, and even something as big as LDP wasn't even included in it. There was a couple of greenways mentioned in it, and that's about the pick of it. All the rest was kind of box ticking. No, the LDP not even mentioned it. I think it was a major omission, and I think that's something we need to be very, very, very keep a tight eye on from now on.
Thank you, Councillor McGuire. Everyone happy to move on? Okay, so the next one is the 14 public sector. That's you're doing that one, yeah?
Sure. The purpose of this report is to seek members' comments and approval on the internal audit section self-assessment against the public sector internal audit standards. The internal audit section is required on an annual basis to carry out a self-assessment against the public sector internal audit standards. The overall result of the self-assessment exercise for 1920 is that the Council's internal audit section has a high level of compliance with the public sector internal audit standards. The self-assessment against the public sector internal audit standards for the Council's internal audit section for 1920 is attached to Appendix M for members' review and comments. There are no financial or other implications arising from this report, and it is recommended that members approve the internal audit section self-assessment against the public sector internal audit standards attached to Appendix M.
Thank you, James. Anyone, any questions? Happy to approve? Thank you. 15, corporate risk register, and Denise is taking that.
Thanks, Chair. Members, the purpose of this report is to seek your endorsement for the Council's updated corporate risk register. So a complete review of the risk register has taken place given the significant changes to Council's risk environment in light of the COVID-19 crisis, and a report summarising the Council's current critical and high scoring risks is attached for your information. As members will see, the register details the identified risks and the current controls in place to mitigate them. The risk has been assessed to determine their potential impact and the likelihood of occurrence, which enables the assignment of a ranking to each risk. The report also includes details of the most recent reviews that have been carried out. Members will note that there are 2 critical scoring risks on the register at this time, and it's the same risks that we spoke about in the previous report in terms of the significant governance issues. In addition to this, there are a number of high scoring risks in the register which are detailed below there for members' information and comment. For all of the risks identified, in line with the Council's risk management strategy, the corporate risk register summarise the key sources of assurance and controls which are in place to manage the risks. So happy to take any comments or questions members have and seeking your endorsement. Thank you.
Go ahead there, Bruna.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Denise, for that. I wanted to ask in relation to the ICT risk. Obviously, key critical element of the business, as no doubt we saw during the COVID-19 period, and also with cybersecurity being such a serious risk for all businesses in these days. The actual risk register on page 5 to 9 makes a comment that funding and investment, particularly in the short term, remains an issue, and I wanted to ask about that, tied up with the fact that the ICT audit that was planned for 1920 couldn't take place due to COVID, understandably, and just want to know when that will actually take place and what does that look like. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Brona. In terms of the ICT risk, obviously, as you say, it's been a huge risk at this minute in time in terms of the COVID-19 crisis, but the digital services team have been amazing throughout this process and obviously have dealt with significant challenges. We have put a lot of investment into it in terms of additional service capacity, licensing, to allow home working and that, but there's additional expenditure that we need as well, which we're looking at, and we will consider that in future. In terms of the ICT audit, obviously that couldn't happen as a result of COVID, but it has commenced in that the ICT manager is currently looking at the ISO 27001. There's conversations being held in relation to that the internal audit team are part of, and there will be a gap analysis carried out and the audit will follow for that. Thank you.
Okay, everyone happy enough? Okay, Brona. And the last item we have here is 16 is for information, unless someone wants to speak on it. Okay, so that basically brings the meeting to an end. Thank you very much, and thank you, Brona, and thank you, Colette, for your attendance today,
Thank you, Chair.
and obviously the staff. Somebody looking in there. Okay, thank you, folks.